Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another of these brand new Meng dinosaurs. As you can see, we've got another 1/72nd scale figure. We have the Sinankylosaurus, and that is quite interesting because that is definitely a species of ankylosaur I do not have in my collection, and in fact I've actually never seen anybody release a model of this species before. So pretty exciting when it comes to Meng. They're definitely quite good at, creating figures of very obscure species. You can see the box art is pretty much the standard when it comes to Meng. There's not really a whole lot going on that would differentiate this box from any of the others. You can see we do have some information here on the side about the model as well as about the species. And then again, that super cool artwork there in the front. And if you turn it around, pretty much the same thing on the opposing side. So let's pop this box open and check it out. Now, as I'm sure you were able to tell, that's a pretty small box. Contained within the box, though, we do have two pretty cool cards. One card shows off some nice artwork for the figure. The other card shows off basically the skeletal reconstruction. And if you turn the cards around, take a look at the back, you can see one card has some information I can't read. The other card has some information I can. So, nice to at least be able to read a little bit of that. And then, of course, our Sinankylosaurus itself, you can see we've got a nice base there for it. And then the figure itself looks pretty cool, but it's very small. As you can see, this is far and away the smallest Meng figure that they have released so far, even smaller than their Sinoceratops, which I honestly did not think would ever be defeated as far as being the smallest figure. But the Sinankylosaurus definitely takes the cake as far as that goes. Let's see if we can get this on the base so we can take a look at it, kind of standing here in all of its glory. So there we go. Here is our tiny Sinankylosaurus, and you can see it is exactly that. It is very small, and you'll also notice that when it's standing in the base, it looks like both of the front legs are actually up off of the ground. And I will say it doesn't stay in the base too well, but at least it's staying in there right now. It doesn't look too bad. Definitely a pretty cool and very interesting color scheme chosen for this figure. So, as always, without further ado, let's jump to a closer look and we'll check it out from there. So, starting up here at the head sculpt of our Sinankylosaur, you can see it looks pretty cool. It definitely is a decent looking head sculpt when it comes to the overall shape, the fine detail. The fine detail is a little muted, but I think that's pretty common when it comes to these Meng figures. It seems like quite often the detail isn't quite as crisp as you might see on other figures. There is some weird paint here on the snout, though, that you can see, kind of like some white that's just applied there, and I think the figure would have definitely looked better without it. I kind of feel like I would almost think it was sloppiness that was put there by mistake, but you can see like both sides kind of have that white paint, and then there's just a splotch of it right there in the center of the snout on the top of the head. But that's definitely ugly. The eyes, though, are pretty decent, very small. You can see they're actually painted with a black, then applied with a white and a black pupil, which is pretty decent paintwork for something like this, especially after the Zucheng Titan had fairly sloppy eye paint. As you lead up here into the top of the head, you've got some pretty cool kind of like orange spots up here, which is definitely an interesting choice of color for a species of dinosaur like this. You can also see the head is turned toward the left. You can start to see the armor up here on the back. You basically have a brown for the body color of the Sinankylosaurus, and then you have like a dry brushing, looks like a tan kind of dry brushing over a good bit of the top of the figure. Not super impressive, a little lackluster and kind of sloppy, but there is a dry brushing up there, kind of trying to highlight the detail. But again, when you get close, you can see the details there. It's just not quite as vibrant as we are used to with many other companies' figures. As you lead along the side of the neck, you see kind of like some light striping, like orangish striping, and then down here on the underside of the body, you see more kind of that tone, but in spots and stuff as you move along. You can see the detail, again, looks okay for what it is, but still definitely a little muted, like when it comes to the fine detail. You don't see much in the way of skin wrinkles and folds. You don't really see any scale detail, maybe very, very slightly. It looks okay considering how small it is, but I feel like it could have been a little bit more impressive. You can also see we have some variation of colors. We've got like some reddish browns, and then it transitions to a darker brown as you move back into the stomach, kind of the same darker brown you see up on the top, but you see that moving back also as you move down the legs. You can see the nails are painted, and they're kind of painted fairly decently for their size. They also feature a nice gloss coat which is a plus. Obviously, both legs are kind of held closer together on this side as the dinosaur's walking along. And as you lead out here into the tail, we do transition to an orangish tone, and then we've got like a striping effect with whites and blacks as we move down the course of the tail. Not a huge fan of it because I don't think it looks very natural when it comes to the way it's applied, and the way it transitions away is super abrupt, not smooth or anything. So like, I'm not a huge fan of that coloration. I think it is like a cool idea. Again, something you don't really see too often when it comes to ankylosaur species is any sort of like a patterning just moving down the tail like that. So I do appreciate the idea. I just think it could have been applied a little bit better. And that, as well as something that's pretty common when it comes to these Meng figures, is the fact that the paint application more often than not looks more like paint than body color. And as you move out into the club tail, you can see we return to a brown with a little bit of that dry brushing on it. Not a whole lot though, kind of similar to what we see on the back where we have that dry brushing, but not a whole lot. But as you look at the opposing side, again, you can see it looks fairly decent. Obviously, the biggest difference here is the fact that the legs are further apart, but you can kind of see a little bit more, I think, detail on this side compared to what we saw on the first side. It just feels like there might be slightly a little bit more, but regardless, it's not all that impressive, but it is still cool to have this species again, a species of dinosaur I did not have prior. And then we've also got a very small base. As I said, you can see we've got some footprints in the kind of muddy area that the Sinankylosaurus is walking along through, and you've also got a little variation of color with different shades of browns and kind of like yellowish browns, and then a little bit of a dry brushing as well over the top of the base. And again, the actual texturing and everything looks alright. Actually, I think the texturing looks better on this than it does on the dinosaur itself, but fairly fun base for a decent figure. Now we kind of have the figure here standing on all fours. So for a size lengthwise, you're looking at right around 2 3/4 inches, or about 7 centimeters. And then for a height, the highest point would be that tail, about 1 inch or about 2.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Sinankylosaurus from Meng. And as you can see, it is very, very small. Like, I would say right around in like the Kyoto size range for what I usually find from their figures. So if you are curious as far as the size goes, definitely on the smaller size, absolutely in like mini figure size range, maybe even a little smaller than like a Mattel mini. And actually, to show you that, we've got a Captives Indoraptor and a Mattel Parasaurolophus next to our Meng Sinankylosaurus, and you can see again, it is even smaller than your standard Mattel Mini. And then for another comparison, we actually have the Meng Sinoceratops I was just speaking of, which you can see again, the Sinankylosaurus is officially the smallest figure in this line so far. And then for one final comparison, next to the largest figure in the Meng line so far, we have the Zucheng Titan next to the Sinankylosaurus. And as you can see, there's pretty much a massive difference in size between these two, but they do look pretty fun next to each other. So this brand new Meng Sinankylosaurus is pretty much a mixed bag, and I think that's something that can be said for most of these Meng dinosaur figures so far, because I feel like they haven't been quite as impressive as I was hoping. Like when they were first unveiled and announced, I was pretty excited about them, but now after having a few of their figures being this far into the line, I can say there's definitely improvements that can be made, like the detail on the figures could definitely be a little more crisp and a little bit more vibrant, not quite so muted and washed out, and the paintwork definitely has some room for improvement when it comes to the realism aspect, because a lot of the paintwork looks kind of generic and definitely more like paint on a figure over actual body color. That being said, they are still releasing some very cool species, and this Sinankylosaurus is no exception. It's definitely a fun species of dinosaur. Again, it's a great day when I can get any new species to add to my collection, and that's exactly what Meng has done here. They've given me a brand new Sinankylosaurus to add to my collection, which is really cool. I think the color scheme they've chosen for it, even if not perfectly applied, is still a pretty cool color scheme. I like that they kind of thought outside the box when it comes to the type of colors and paint scheme you would normally see for a dinosaur like this. So that is a plus, even if it doesn't look absolutely fantastic. You know, it's at least nice to see a company doing something a little bit different. The pose on it is pretty nice and natural, just kind of walking along. The tail is curved. Maybe it's sort of defending itself. I'm not entirely sure, but it's a decent pose, pretty much the type of pose you would expect for a species of dinosaur like this. And on top of of that, you have a pretty fun base, you know, just to kind of create a scene for your dinosaur model. So overall, it's definitely not a great figure, but it is still kind of fun. If you are interested, I will do my best to find a link to include in the description. I was able to acquire this thanks to my good friend Dino Mike Mac, who was cool enough to hook me up with this one and help me get a hold of it, and again now allow me to review it for you guys. So a huge thank you goes out to him for helping me find this one. And of course, if you are interested, make sure you check the link in the description, grab it if you want it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.